Welcome, everyone. This is Debbie Mayberry with National Kitchen and Bath Association. You're here for our third webinar of the month on business trends. Today's session is called Disabling the Fear Factor, How to Communicate with Your Client and Build Trust. Dwayne Becker is with us, and he's the owner of Sopre Training. I'd also like to thank HEDIC for their generous sponsorship for all of our webinars this month. And Dwayne, we're ready to get started. Thanks so much.
Sure, thanks, Debbie. I liked your introduction too earlier about the fireside chat. I don't have the fire with me, but hopefully it'll feel something like that. Just a little bit of an introduction to the company that she mentioned. Sopre Training, I developed for sales and presentation training to help facilitate designers' successes by helping them improve their skill sets. What I discovered over the years is that I frequently have two extremes of designers that I talk to. A designer that either can design amazingly well but can't sell so well, or somebody who sells like gangbusters but they have issues with and challenges with certain elements of design. So I try to take both these elements and combine them into a more well-rounded person. During this presentation, what I would like to do is talk about a few things. First of all, I'm going to be talking about how to create a welcoming atmosphere for your client, ways to stay in control of your transaction, and how to develop communication techniques that help foster and build trust. Now, throughout this, Debbie, if you can help me with this, I'm going to pause from time to time, or at least try to reach out to you guys for questions or comments so that we can make this kind of like a live discussion as opposed to just waiting until the very end. So I don't know if, Debbie, you want to tell them how to do that, if they want to just enter that into the chat screen.
Oh, yes, Dwayne, thanks. So what we can do is I have the Q&A open for those of you that might be using a mobile device, and I have the chat open. So either place, and I'll collect those questions. And then when you're pausing, I'll be looking for questions. So as
Okay, great.
Wayne just said, we'll do that throughout today. Thank you.
Perfect, because I don't have that open. I don't have visual access to that, so that would be great.
Okay.
So to start off, first of all, many of you as designers have probably been in this profession for a long time. And let's face it, when a new prospect walks into your showroom or sits with you for that first appointment, it can be very exciting. And you might be anxious to discuss how you can assist your prospect with their project, anxious to find out what they want to accomplish, anxious to talk to them about the products and services that you offer, anxious to review how the process goes, how to get started with the project. Stop. Take a breath and visualize how your greeting and conversation is going to go before you begin. Slow down. Your prospect may have never done a remodeling project before, or at least probably not with you. And there's going to be some speed bumps on the road. And if you rush things and rush down that road, those speed bumps are going to hurt. So take your time and walk through the process. Now, some of you might be aware of this, but for those who aren't, many customers don't buy because of fear. Fear of almost everything imaginable. Fear that they will get criticized for making weird choices, that they will end up paying too much, that you're going to take advantage of them, that they're not on trend with their new space, that they don't even know where to turn for the choices to make, okay? They at least probably are nervous and don't know where to start the conversation. Okay? Remember, the conversation should not be about you or the service or products you provide. You can get to that if they have questions about that or when it comes time to assist them with what they want to accomplish. It should be about them. I know you're anxious to share your expertise, your insight, and the services you can provide, but that's not what the customer wants to hear when they first walked into your showroom or department. They want to talk about what they want to do. A quote from a favorite author of mine is, "You get the customers that you deserve." And prospect with integrity and trust, and you will attract customers who have integrity and trust. These are quotes from Mark Hunter's A Mind for Sales, which is an excellent book if you're looking for a book on sales. It's really wonderful. But these are really true. If you allow the prospect to lead you around and start talking about price, for example, and feed into that, guess what? You will get a client that is mostly focused on that. Whereas if you truly want to foster a consultative atmosphere, you will acquire that sort of client. Question is, do you want the customer, like this image in the left, being the captain of the ship and directing everything with nobody around them to suggest other ideas or possibilities on what can be done? Or do you want to consult with your client and treat it as though it's a partnership and team up with them to create a new project? You will, once again, develop the client that you deserve. So, of course, if you want to be trusted, you need to treat your customers with authenticity and have integrity. You can't be fake or artificial or feign interest, because prospects will be able to see right through that and will feel compelled to seek out someone else if they feel like you're being fake. Okay? Do what is right and proper, not what is the easy path. Follow the necessary steps. Have you ever walked into a showroom, a car showroom, and felt like you were being swarmed by vultures? It's happened to me. You feel like, oh no, here they come. Here come the salespeople. I know I felt that way before. It's as though someone taught them the swooping in approach. Don't make your prospect feel the same way. Don't swoop in. Once again, the chances are good that they have never visited your place before, so let them walk in, let them take in the space. Don't immediately greet them, okay? Don't ignore them either, but give them 20 or 30 seconds to take in the space and comprehend what exactly they're seeing, especially since it's probably the first time they've been there. But be where they can see you, okay? I've walked into a kitchen showroom before and been greeted, and then the person who greeted me disappeared. They were gone. So if I had a question about something, I would have to go seek them out. So even if they want to wander before talking to you, be where they can see you. Be over here at a display with a dust rag, just dusting, if you will, even if it doesn't need dusting, so that they know where you are. Okay? Be relaxed, pleasant, and friendly, of course, but don't be overly enthusiastic either. That could put them off. I was thinking when I was working on presenting this that I would demonstrate how to be overly enthusiastic, and I'm not even going to try because it would seem very fake, so I'm not even going to do that. But don't be overly enthusiastic. That could really kind of put somebody off and almost scare them. once again, the fear thing. But you want your customer to feel relaxed and comfortable, because there's a lot of personal information you need to find out about your client if you are to present them with an effective design that takes their needs into consideration. Your prospect will withhold some information from you, possibly their budget, if they have been shopping around, or other important things, if they perceive you to be untrustworthy or inauthentic. Was I wrong, or did I see a couple comments or questions in there?
Dwayne, there was a comment here from Kara, and she said, I fall into the category of a better salesperson than designer. My biggest advice for sales is to listen with capital letters well and closely to what the customer wants and needs in order to meet those needs. And then Jacqueline says, I can already tell this information is extremely valuable and true. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you, both of you. Kara, I think you had mentioned if you are a better salesperson than designer, you've probably already thought of this. Maybe do some research on some of the finer details on design, but we can get into that at another time. Thank you for that. When it does come time to sit down and discuss things, find a comfortable place to sit, or excuse me, have a comfortable place for them to sit, okay? You probably don't have the fireplace as is pictured here, but create a comfortable atmosphere in which they can feel relaxed. Offer them a beverage of some sort. Offer them, soda, water, coffee, tea. Make them feel like they're going to cozy in, snuggle in, and spend a little time with you. Okay. Now, this one, I think a lot of people really don't think about too much, but consider your physical relationship with your prospect. Okay. What do I mean by that? Okay. Well, take a look at this photo. Okay. This probably seems fine, right? You have a consultative approach. You have a happy, friendly salesperson, designer, presenting, discussing the project, but and everything seems fine, right? But look at the physical relationship between these two. Does it seem like one person is commanding over another? Almost feels that way. Now, try this idea instead. Try to sit adjacent to each other rather than having a desk in between you. Sit 90 degrees to them or right next to them. This will make them feel like you are developing a partnership and that you are consulting together rather than dictating what you will be doing for them, as opposed to let's work on this together. It works very well, and it's something that a lot of people really don't think about too much as far as where they're sitting. It's very typical that there's a desk in between. Try to work on that, because that makes someone more comfortable also. Before moving on to the next, are there a couple more comments?
There are. So from Gail, she says, I always listen and I'm a great designer, but I'm a sole practitioner, no showroom. In fact, mostly virtual right now. Do you have anything for a sole practitioner?
Sole practitioner. In other words, no other staff. It's you online discussing things with a client. Yes?
I think that's it.
Yeah. Again, go with the comfort thing. There's no showroom. So whether you can show people physical things, that you will probably have to get creative about. But if you are going to be discussing things with the client for a while, make sure they are comfortable. Discuss it with them. Okay, do you have a comfortable place to sit? Because we're going to be talking for a little while. Do you need to get something to drink before we get started? Do you need to use the restroom before we get started? Things like that. Whatever you can do to encourage them to relax a little bit. Find their favorite chair in the room that they're in, or something to that effect might help.
Okay, Dwayne. And then, of course, this question comes up. how does the positioning that you're speaking about today work during the COVID times, as you knew this would probably come up?
Yeah, I did know it would come up, and a lot of it you can use, but you have to be more creative than how I'm presenting it. A lot of the stuff I'm going to get to a little later on really isn't a in-person issue, but yes, you do have to get a little creative with encouraging people to be comfortable, how you're going to accomplish that virtually.
Okay.
Absolutely. That is tricky. Yes.
Great. Dwayne, I have a nice tip here from Jennifer. She says, I work for a big box store and it is really hard to truly listen now because of the masks and the plexiglass barriers. She says, I usually will leave the desk and walk to a vignette to be a little more intimate.
I think that's fantastic. That's a great idea. Depending on the showroom you're in, you may want to find some large horizontal space, even some counter space, so that you can stand up maybe and have that discussion side by side with the client. That's wonderful.
Okay.
So to continue, of course, with customers walking in, you are most likely going to encounter a person with a real type A personality. There isn't necessarily a fear factor per se with this sort of prospect, but there probably are going to be challenges. This is a true take charge sort of person who likes to be in control. They are often impatient and they can be abrupt, but they also like challenges. And this person likes to challenge you, they like to challenge others, and they are typically very competitive. But this person with this sort of mentality will rarely see their relationship with you as consultative. Unless you bring up something miraculous that they've never thought of before, most likely they are going to dictate what they want. And if you can provide for them, it will frequently come down to price. Okay. So really what I'm getting at with that is you really need to make a choice about how much effort and time you want to put into a client such as this. I'm not saying that they aren't worthwhile to have, but it's a different way of handling a client. Usually they want to move quickly. Have any of you, probably if you've been designing for a while, you've probably had a customer that comes in and says something like this. Look, I only have about 30 minutes and I know exactly what I want. It's not a ton of cabinets. Can you put it together and give me a quote? So here's how I like to handle that. Well, Mr. Prospect, this process and what you want to accomplish usually takes a little bit more than 30 minutes, but let's get started and see what we can accomplish. Bear with me. You can be as subtle or obvious about it as you want, but if you get that really demanding customer, if you wear a watch, take your watch off, put it on the desk in front of you, and then start the process as you normally would. Don't rush it, and stop at 30 minutes. And say to the client, you said you only have 30 minutes. That is 30 minutes. Should we set up a follow-up appointment where we can continue this conversation, or would you like to continue? If they're pleasant and they like what you've been saying so far, I can almost guarantee you every single time they will tell you to continue, and you will be there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. But it's a way to slow them down so that you have the opportunity to work at the pace that you need to work at without being rushed by them. It works really, really well. And it's great for that person who wants to be in charge. Questions or comments?
Well, Jacqueline said she was dealing with someone that you were mentioning, the type A personality. She's dealing with one right now, and she agrees with what you said. And Chanda says such a great tip, so thank you.
Oh, cool. Wonderful. Now, of course, when people come in, they
Oh,
will have
excuse me,
what?
Dwayne, there's one more here. I apologize. I
Yeah,
didn't see it. So from Renee, she says, digital suggestion, use a Zoom background related to your service or life design experience, or a corner of your showroom or home where you're proud of and shows your style that you think might relate to them from a previous conversations with them.
good. That's a great idea. I love that. Unlike mine, because I didn't design mine. um,
Oh, and one more, Dwayne, excuse me.
sure.
So Tricia wants to know, are there any book recommendations that you have for learning about different personalities?
I do have a couple. Please email me. The email address is at the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to share those sources with you.
Thank you.
Moving on, internet research. A lot of cabinetry people these days.
Excuse me, Dwayne, one more for you, please. I
Sure.
apologize. So Carrie wants to know, you opened up the floodgates here.
I did.
So Carrie wants to know, how do you handle a type A personality that interrupts you, talks over you, and also tries to rush your
What?
process?
Talks over you?
Talks over you, exactly, and rushes your process.
Stop talking, first of all, and let them talk until they're done talking, which could take a while. Also, sometimes you need to stop them and say, here's what I've experienced will happen is they'll go off on some point and you will want to address that point, and then they will move on to another point without giving you the opportunity to addressing the first one. So what I like to do is say, stop just a minute, hold that thought, we will get to that. Let's talk about this first idea first. And then you can approach the first idea or the first thought, and then you can move on to the other. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but hopefully that's an idea that will help. Internet research. Some cabinet people these days get a little uptight when they find out that their client has done a lot of research online, thinking that they've probably discovered a lot of information that is maybe not quite true. Don't get bent out of shape about that, but one thing you can do is commend them for doing their research. Whether you think it's beneficial to them or not, tell them, oh, something like, well, you probably know more than most of my clients already. That's great. That means my job is going to be easier. Okay, whether you think that's true or not, it's great. Commend them for having done some research. And express empathy also for how overwhelming that experience probably was. Okay, because we all know it is, because do a search for kitchen cabinets, you'll come up with a million things. Where do I start? Okay, so since they probably did spend time looking at all that, ask if you can help clarify anything that they've seen. There's a lot of choices and a lot of stuff out there. Where do you start? And customers are usually appreciative if you can take the time out to educate them on what it was that they saw, clarify any specifics, and definitely express empathy regarding the overwhelming number of choices and how difficult it might be to navigate this. For those who may not be aware of this, you know that 30% of potential clients in the kitchen and bath industry never buy anything because they're so overwhelmed by too many choices. They give up. So the way I like to see it is, be their New York City tour guide. Let's say you've never been to New York City before, ever, and you're going to be there, but you're going to be there for one day. What do? You've never been there. You're probably going to ask a friend who lives there or who has been there multiple times. So what should I do? I have one day. And you're going to prioritize what is important to you, as opposed to what may not be so important to someone else. So be your client's tour guide. Help them sift through the myriad of choices that they need to go through or make during the course of their project. In this process, of course, you will hopefully be asking them what their budget is at some point. This is a sticky point for a lot of people. Some clients are hesitant to give you that information. But let me ask you this. Have you ever seen any real estate agent that is going to start helping you shop for a house without knowing what your budget is? It's not going to happen, because it doesn't make any sense for them to show you a $500,000 home if you've got $250,000 for your budget. They need to know that information so they can make the right choices for potentials for you, okay? It's the same idea when you're designing for a client. But here's the thing about the budget. Explain to your client why you need to know that information. Tell them, look, the reason I need to know that number is not so that I can spend every penny that you have to spend or use every penny that you have to spend. The reason I need to know that is so that I can make educated choices to hopefully keep you near that number. That's why I need to know, because it doesn't make any sense for me to design a $80,000 space for you if you have $30,000 to spend. So you need to know. And for those who sometimes get clients who say, budget's not important, it doesn't matter, then I just like to say, great, so we can go ahead and design a $90,000 space for you and you're good with that, right? Whoa, wait a minute. No, not necessarily. Okay, so budget does matter. I don't care how much money you have to spend, there's always a budget. And that's important information to know. So explain why you ask that question. Review the process. See, this is another thing that feeds into the fear that customers have and the fear of why they don't want to buy. It's because they're not familiar with the process and how it goes. Take time to review. I mean, obviously, much of it is a timeline and much of it is going to be in ideal circumstances, but review with them a potential project timeline so that they understand each step of the process and how it should go. That way, you, again, disable much of the fear factor, which is keeping them from moving forward in their project. So don't just tell them what the next day's plans are going to be the next time they come visit you, but how it's going to be throughout the steps. Now, speaking of throughout the steps, anyone who's seen any of my talks before knows I like to talk about appointments and how to handle appointments. Well, I'm not going to spend this hour getting into a lot of details of that, but one thing that you can do to disable the fear factor once again is, you know, a lot of designers I hear try to set up an appointment with the customer and the design is done, so why do I need to meet with you? Review an agenda for the next appointment. What is going to be accomplished during the next appointment? Also, once you're done with that, get your customer's approval on what you would like to accomplish at the next appointment and ask them if there's anything that they would like to get accomplished that you haven't talked about the next time you meet. That way, once again, the next time there isn't any hesitation. They know why they're sitting down with you. Their expectations are there. They know what's going to be discussed. Any questions so far?
Just a couple of comments here, Dwayne, if I may.
Okay. Sure.
So let's see. So Ellen says she's a sole proprietor, and she says she's talking about clients. I commend them, but also let them know that photos that they find online will help her know their style. but since it is their home now and not a photo, that she will take those style ideas they found, narrow them down, and apply them to their home.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then Jennifer says, when we were talking about budget, she said, I never say budget. I always say if they have an idea on how much they want to invest.
Yeah, I like that too. A lot of people like to use the term invest. The only reason I don't like to use the word invest is because as a customer, I feel like you're using that word to get around saying how much I want to spend or what my budget is. You're not fooling me. You're asking me how much I want to spend. They don't necessarily perceive it as an investment, even though we all know that you're improving most likely real estate. So it is an investment, but they don't really perceive it that way. That's the only reason, me personally, I don't like to use that word, but I understand what you mean.
Okay. And then Darius says, thank you. Great explanation for the budget. Budget does matter and how to communicate this with our clients. And then Doris says, I feel emphasizing the design process to fit their lifestyles and then selecting the style of cabinets they like or other kitchens that they've seen that appeal to them.
Sure, definitely.
Yep.
Kind of going along with the photo idea. Yep.
And then at some point, I'd like to address, I don't want to do it now, but I'd like you to address when we're talking about A-type personalities. Annette wanted to know suggestions for a designer with that has an A-type personality. So,
Okay, remind me and we'll come back to that.
okay, great.
I have a question first, but okay.
Thanks, Dwayne.
So at some point, you're going to be doing a presentation with your client. First of all, don't assume they understand what you're talking about. Take time to educate them, but in a nice way. Don't treat them as idiots though either, but when you're explaining what you've done to a cabinet, for example, let's say you have a flush finished end on a cabinet. Mr. Client, do you know what that means? Do you know what I'm talking about? I think I do. Okay, then take the time to explain it if they don't really know what you're talking about. They will like the fact you're taking time out to educate them on that. And it's also a nice benefit because then when they go shopping, they can ask that other potential designer, hey, does that have a flush finished end over here? And they might be taken aback by thinking, well, wait a minute, you're questioning what I've done for you, and it might create a nice adversarial relationship. But again, take the time to educate them on what you're talking about, and also don't use lingo or jargon. The one thing that I hear done frequently, and I'm just going to throw out a couple examples, is, oh, that's just a filler. Okay, I've never done a kitchen before. I've never installed a kitchen before. What's a filler? I don't know that. So again, take your time to, if you need to use that term, I don't know what you'd use as a term other than filler for a filler, but do you know what a filler is? Ask them. Do you know what I mean by that? Starter molding. Oh, we'll just put some starter molding on top and it'll be fine. What's starter molding? Okay. So try to stay away from the lingo and the jargon and use every layman's terms to describe the first time you describe it, of course, what you're trying to present to them. Another thing about presenting, present with confidence. Here's something that's very, very important. If you really want somebody to buy what you've done for them, present it confidently. Think about that for just a minute. I mean, how confident would you be if you were visiting a doctor before a surgical procedure and he says something to the effect of, well, yeah, I've done a lot of these and sometimes they work well and sometimes they don't. Great. Can you get me someone who makes it so that it works out well most of the time, not a whole lot of confidence there. If you present with confidence, your client will not question you with what you're doing so much. They will easily question you or feel unsure about working with you if you are not confident. Also present it with enthusiasm. This is your great new space. Isn't it beautiful? It's going to be amazing. And look, when you're cooking over here, somebody else can be doing this over here. Isn't that cool? Or your kid can be studying for school over here on this desk, and they're not going to be in your way. Isn't that great? I have heard designers, I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, present their designs like their dog just died. And I'm like, where's your enthusiasm? If you're not excited about what you're presenting, what makes you think your customer is going to be excited about buying it? So present it that way. Be excited. Now, from time to time, your customer might be concerned about certain aspects of the project or the design. Validate their concerns. Don't brush them off. Don't poo-poo them, if you will. Don't say something like, look, it's never been a problem before. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be an issue. Well, that doesn't validate their concern. They're concerned about it. Okay, so if they present a concern like that, address it. Reassure them that if there is an issue, you'll be there to help, but address the concern. Validate the fact that they have a concern on what is to them a relatively large project. Objections. A lot of people talk about objections. Most sales coaches tell you how to handle objections. There's even an excellent book out there with the same title by Jeb Blunt called simply Objections. It's a great sales book. People are always talking about overcoming objections. Well, overcoming objections is far too difficult. You know, if somebody has that strong of an objection, you're probably not going to overcome it. So instead of treating what you perceive from your customer as an objection, consider the fact that they're really only concerns instead. Hey, if I was doing a large kitchen remodel, I would have some concerns. Absolutely. This can change your whole approach and mentality when having these discussions with your client. If you're presenting it and you want to know right then and there if they're ready to buy it, ask them. You seem a little hesitant. What are your concerns? If they present the fact that they want to get a better price, what exactly about the price makes you concerned? Ask them. But it's a way to generate a conversation and discuss their concerns and approach them. They're not objections, they're concerns. And maybe by presenting that, or presenting it with that perspective and having that discussion with that in mind, that will open up the table for discussion, and then you can move forward. Another great sales book, speaking of sales books, is Getting to Know. The word know, not K-N-O-W, no. And the concept behind that whole process is if you never hear no, you've got no way to move forward. If you hear yes all the time from your client, they could just be placating you and letting you move ahead by saying yes, but they're never really ready to buy. But if they say no, you have a talking point now. There's something to discuss. No is great. I love no. Why? Because now we can discuss it and talk about why you feel like you don't want to, or it's a concern. You must, in the end, cultivate a level of trust with your clients to overcome their fears. If you don't have the trust of your client, you are left with only the price, and you just become a commodity. with a strong level of trust, price will become mostly irrelevant. Thank you very much for joining me. More questions, comments?
Okay, Dwayne, thank you so much. So let's see. Jaylene says, Carolyn, actually, when we were talking about budget earlier, Carolyn said, budget typically depends on how long the person will be in their home or if they plan on selling soon.
Absolutely. My experience has been that if they're selling, if they know they're going to be selling soon, they really want something that looks great but is inexpensive. Whereas if they're going to be there for a while, they want something that not just looks great but is built well, is better quality, will last a long time. Yeah.
Okay, and then Jaylene says some comments here. I have been working with a type A personality, and she has actually been one of my best customers because she asks lots of questions to clarify all sorts of things and tracks things on her end. And overall, the project has gone very smoothly. She has made appointments to meet with me every time she had a question or wanted to clarify something. All in all, I have appreciated her due diligence on the project.
That's fantastic. Obviously, this person is extremely detailed oriented, but you're obviously fulfilling the needs of this person by answering all of their questions and taking the time to do that. That's great.
Okay, and Doris says, I used to own a showroom and now I'm an independent design professional. She says, I won't go to a client's home for a consultation without charging a fee. I also feel I won't design anything unless they commit, sign an agreement, and pay my design fee.
Sure. We could probably talk for an hour about deposits, design fees, retainers. In fact, I've been part of discussions with the NKBA about that very thing that go on for a long time because everybody's got a different mentality on that. I've talked to some designers who would disagree with you on that and would say, you know what? It's to get extra work. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to visit. Whereas obviously you don't feel the same way, but I think a lot of it has to do with your pipeline and how much business you need to produce. But I completely understand where you're coming from about absolutely the design part. Consulting, that's a personal choice. Yeah.
Okay, and Ramis, and I apologize if I've said that incorrectly, he said, I get some of my leads online or through House. So the first conversation will be on the phone. Should I talk about my hourly rate and that first telephone calls, especially if it is just a color consultation?
I guess I would have to say that depends on how long you expect that consultation to go. Like if it's going to be more than just that one call, and there is an hourly rate for it, then absolutely, they need to be aware of that. But if you expect it to be just that one call, then probably not.
Okay, and Stephen just says trust is key. So thank you. Let's see. George says, I find that giving my clients homework after each meeting tends to invest my client on their project.
Ah, thank you. Awesome. I got excited about that one because I actually used that in one of my talks. I talk about if you ever want to get a sense of whether your client is losing interest in the project, give them homework. It's great because they're invested in it because they're contributing to it also. And then you also get a sense for, again, if they're losing interest, because if you give them homework and you ask them, how long is it going to take you to get me that information? About a week. Then you contact them back in a week and they don't have it yet. Yeah, now maybe they're starting to lose interest or disengage with you, but you'll know that. But that's fantastic. I love that.
All right. And then Ellen says, exactly. I actually invite and give permission at the beginning of our discussions for them to say no and explain that it is helpful so we can be directed down another path better suited to their needs.
Okay, great. Also, give permission. Yeah, that's a good one. Another thing related to that, I would say, is asking for permission. That can work very well with a type A personality too. If you ask their permission to show them something. But here's the kicker. If you want to show them something you think is going to work better than their idea or their notion, and you're convinced that it will, don't tell them what you're going to show them before you show it to them. Just ask, may I show you something that I think is going to work better? Sure, what do you have in mind? Walk them over to it, show them a picture or whatever. Don't describe it first, because they will most definitely shut you down ahead of time. But yeah, asking permission to do something opens the doors for you to be able to present some different thoughts and ideas.
Okay, so to kind of piggyback on that idea, Patrizia says she always asks if return on investment is important to them.
That's an interest. I'd be more interested to find out what their reactions are, what their answers are to that, because, excuse me, because it's such a hard thing to quantify. So I think it's a great question. I'd be interested to find out further how they answer that.
Okay. So Tammy says, this is such great info. Thank you, Dwayne. I'm new to the field and I think I'm pretty trustworthy. It's the confidence I am lacking. It's encouraging to hear your words and I'm totally in the right realm.
Glad to hear you're in the right realm. That's great. Obviously, you've chosen a path that's good for you and you feel comfortable with that. Confidence is key. When I first started in the kitchen bath design world, I wasn't confident about everything, but I hid it really well. And I would present it confidently. And then once my client was gone, then I would research to clarify, I wasn't really sure about what I told them. I need to make sure that what I told them is correct. And then if I discover it's not, then I need to contact them and tell them that it was not correct. I was wrong. But if I present it confidently, there won't be a question. So yeah, confidence is key, but that of course comes with experience.
Okay. And then Karen says, I recently had an interesting experience where a client told me they were pretty sure they knew how much our markup was. And since it was so high, he wanted a discount. How would you have handled this without disclosing our true markup, which was much lower than he thought?
Yeah, well, I'd be interested to find, I wouldn't ask him this, but I would be interested to find out where he thinks he knows how much your cost is. I'm sorry, Debbie, can you repeat the question again?
It wasn't really, I think it was, how would you have handled this, knowing that he wants a discount?
But
without disclosing the true markup, which was lower than he thought.
Right. All right. That's a tricky one. Gonna have to think for a second on that.
You want to come back?
Look, the best way to answer that is to be straight and upfront and say, look, our prices are firm and our prices are fair. And if you've ever heard that quote before, which some of you might have, that's a Jeffrey Gitomer quote. I didn't create that, but in certain circumstances, it works very well. And if you open up the floodgates, even just a little bit, like I did with the question and answer session earlier, if you open up the floodgates just a little bit, like you can't disclose what the cost is, or well, he's wrong on the cost. You're wrong on the cost. We don't mark it up that much. Oh, you don't? Well, how much do you mark it up? Now you've opened up the floodgates for that discussion as though you're willing to talk about it. Look, our price is fair. That's it.
That's good advice, Dwayne. It kind of closes that conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, that kind of, in a nice way, shut them down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and so let's see. Jacqueline says, the information you provided is invaluable. Even though I've been in business for 12 years, I've learned some new approaches today. I'd like more information on your services and book recommendations. Thank you so much.
Then I'm going to continue to the next slide and encourage anyone who wants to talk about any of these ideas further or get any kind of book recommendations to contact me as this information. But we can, of course, still continue our chat.
Okay, great. Yep, there are more questions out here, so I'll just keep going, Dwayne.
Okay, great.
So Beverly says, I've been a designer for many years and I find your tips to be excellent, well thought, and very well expressed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yana says, what do you do with a client who does not want to do homework?
Wow. Then, well, look, there's certain bits of information that you're going to need from them at some point or another, and that's going to take some effort from them. And look, if they're not willing to put in a little bit of effort into their project, then it's a two-way street. I'm not going to put a whole lot of effort into their project either. This is a group thing. I guess I mean, I wouldn't blatantly say that to them, but I would wonder how seriously they are in pursuing this, at least with me, if they're not willing to put in a little effort on that homework.
Yeah, and then so Renee says, I think to kind of piggyback on some of these thoughts today, Renee says customers do tell their neighbors details.
Oh, absolutely. Every detail under the sun. What's funny about it is they tell them more details if they were displeased with you than they do if they were thrilled with you. That's the funny part. Customers tell like 10 to 20 people if something went badly, but they tell 1 or 2 people if things went great. But yeah, they do share everything. Absolutely. And that's why you also don't want to get into the whole markup discussion either.
Okay, and Nettie says HGTV is such a huge influence. Many customers come in simply clueless as to the cost of materials and labor.
Yes, they do. I love the fact that half the materials on HGTV were like donated by the manufacturer. I love that one. And then they seem to do a lot of things over a 3 or 4 day weekend. And what they don't do is they don't show you the 50 people off screen that have been thrown at it to work on it to get it done. Whereas your project is being done by 2 or 3 people. And all the vendors that they need for it are there waiting and ready to go, as opposed to your vendor who's booked out for 6 weeks. Yeah, it's just it's finding creative ways to give your client a dose of reality, of real reality, as opposed to the reality show reality.
Yes, thank you. So Jennifer says, we started carrying a frameless line of cabinets and I didn't know how to design with them. I told the client I could absolutely design his space. And then I took the spec book home and read it practically cover to cover. I learned everything I could regarding acrylic cabinets. I called the rep and asked him questions. In the end, the design is beautiful and the client is happy. I also have more confidence in this line. That's great.
Hey, that's fantastic. Research is key. You can't know too much. That's great.
This is interesting when we were talking about homework. So Renee says they don't want to do homework. They can pay you to do it for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to cost extra. You want me to research the specs on the appliances that you want? Yeah, okay. But there's a fee for that.
Yeah, great comment there. Stephanie says, how do you say NO in caps to working with the client?
First of all, to answer that really accurately, I would have to find out more details as to why you don't want to work with that particular client. But it's putting it plainly, look, I don't feel like you and I really are connecting, and that I don't feel like I am the best resource for you to use for this project.
So she says here, Stephanie says, it's just not a good fit.
Yeah, it's just not a good fit.
Okay.
We're not a good fit, and I don't often do this. I don't turn away clients, but I don't think that I can effectively give you what you're looking for. Something to that effect.
She said, thank you. And then Gail said, just to piggyback on the HGTV thing, she says it is theater.
It is theater. Yeah, absolutely. It's entertainment.
Yes, yes. And there's a couple other comments here about one of the best presentations I've been to, great selling techniques. Thank you for all the great talking points. Then Jaylene has a question here. Can you quickly review how you foster trust?
Quickly, exude trust. Really, I can't put it any other way. First of all, trust them, and that will come back at you, or back to you. But don't, I hate using the word authentic, but be authentic. Don't be phony. Don't be artificial. Hey, if you have, be honest and upfront about questions. If you have issues with a certain product that you're selling, but lately it hasn't been great, tell them that. They don't sell it to them just because they insist that's what they want. They want to hear your opinion. They want to hear your professional opinion. Be honest and upfront with them. That's the best thing I can say.
Okay. And there's still more questions coming in, Dwayne, so we do have a little more time. Are you available?
Absolutely, if you are, Debbie.
Yes, of course.
Oh, and the whole question thing, honest and upfront. One thing that I used to tell my clients when I was designing is, look, you're doing your entire kitchen, including your flooring. I can pretty much promise you there are going to be hiccups, and there are going to be hiccups that will make your project take longer or be more inconvenient than you thought it was going to be. So just be ready for that. Then when it happens, they're less upset at me because I kind of prepped them for it. That's what I mean by being honest. It's like trying to review almost all the possibilities of what could happen.
Great. Thank you, Dwayne. So Cindy says she really liked the real estate agent analogy when asking about budget. We give sticker shock with some customers, especially with bathroom renos. Thanks for that. Then she said, we developed a blog that we point them to before each visit that gives ballparks and refer to cost versus value report.
I think that's great. A cost versus value, I think, still is a little arbitrary, subject to interpretation, but the cost report or the average cost, I think, is great as long as it's an accurate tool to use. That's wonderful because, yeah, most clients, consumers don't understand how much a kitchen, I mean, a lot of baths cost more than redoing a kitchen, but a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, and Renee just put in here, cost value is different in every city. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's all a matter of perspective too. It might be worth real estate value, but is it worth intrinsic value to a potential buyer?
I think that's a difficult one, really.
It is.
Let's see. Jacqueline says, I'd like some elaboration on dealing with clients during the COVID pandemic. Let me just get back to her question because it's already affecting sales in her area.
I'd be curious to find out what area she's in. And I only say that because in my area, sales are through the roof. It is crazy. It is one of the biggest selling years we have seen as far as kitchen cabinets and remodels are concerned in years.
She told me she's Texas Hill Country in San Antonio.
Interesting. Okay, because I'm up in the Northeast in New England, so interesting. Yeah, and Texas is pretty ugly as COVID-wise, from what I can see. I guess the hardest part is probably prospecting and bringing those people to you. Maybe finding creative ways of advertising your services and what you can provide. I'm not sure what some of those would be, but finding interesting ways to reach out to the public out there when they're not coming in through your door, so you got to find them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it is difficult, I think, as this situation kind of changes throughout the country. And
Yeah, if I had a marketing degree, I might be able to help you a little more, but
but I mean, seriously, the health situation changes throughout the country
Mhm.
at any given time, so it's very difficult. Um, So Jennifer says she would like, how do you retain trust when the client likes you and wants to work with you? You get the sale, but then your service providers drop the ball and make you look bad. I have no choice on my service providers. It's my job to sell for the company. And sometimes I don't have the trust in my support team. This is a conundrum.
It is, and it's very difficult. I've been there. Um, the best way you can foster and hopefully keep the trust is um, I know that in some cases you don't have a choice on some of those vendors. In some cases you might try to pick the ones that are better than others. In other cases, um, the best you can do is communicate with your client and keep them in the loop. What's really interesting that I've discovered is people usually are less frustrated when things go south if they know exactly what's going on. The annoying part is sometimes that means communicating with them every other day, sometimes every day for a couple weeks, depending on the person. And sometimes that communication is just to tell them that you have no new information yet, which is like, why am I calling them? Why am I emailing them? I don't have anything new to tell them. So I'm going to wait a couple days until I hear something. No, tell them you're still working on it. You just don't have any new information yet. They will more appreciate that than you ignoring them for a day or two. Maybe that'll help a little.
Thank you, Dwayne. I think I have like time for 2 more questions here. So let me look
Okay.
in. So someone, I'm not sure who the person is, they're anonymous here. Do you have any tips of what to say to a client you think is disengaging from the project?
If you can communicate with them, and I say, if they will pick up the phone or return an email or something to that effect, call them out on it in a nice way. Say, look, we haven't met in a while, or you haven't responded to my emails or something. Have you lost interest in pursuing this project?
Okay.
Ask
And
them. And a
yeah,
lot of times, if that's not the case, they'll get all defensive. Oh, no, not at all. I was just really busy with blah, 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 or my life took a turn and I got really tied up with this thing over here. Or they won't respond to you, but lots of times you'll get a story.
okay. And then Anne says she just wants to make a comment here. Setting expectations is everything.
Mhm.
And getting back to that cost versus value report, Brian says, sometimes cost is not as important to the client, but the use value of the remodel or addition outweighs the project dollar cost. The key is truly discovering what the client wants and needs to have a successful project at the end.
I want to elaborate that. I agree with that. I want to elaborate that on a small level. A lot of it has to do with resale value with homes. And when you're selecting kitchen cabinets and countertops and flooring and just the whole look, for example, and you're doing it with the consideration of potentially selling in the near future, you have to take different things into consideration than if you were doing it for yourself. And I don't mean quality, I mean the look. So just as an extreme, yeah, I love, let's say I want my cabinets to be purple because I love the color purple and I want it to be in my home and I want to see purple. Okay, well, chances are very good that if somebody comes in to buy my home and they see a purple kitchen, their first thought will be, I can't stand that. I'm going to have to redo the kitchen if I buy the home. As opposed to what you would love to get, the best thing you can hope for is when you're redoing the kitchen is the reaction of, we'll have to redo the kitchen, but we can live with it. Yeah, occasionally you might have the I love the kitchen, but if you can get the we can live with that for a while, then you're golden. And that's where making your choices on what to do is different than if it were going to be yours.
Okay, Dwayne, and then I thank you for that. I just want to get back to this one question that we told Annette we would talk about. This was the one about the suggestions for a designer with a type A personality, not the client, but the designer.
Yeah, when you say suggestions for them, um, what is their relationship to you? First of all, what do you mean by that?
I think she's still with us, so I'm
Okay.
not sure that she has something. I think when we were talking, obviously, much earlier about working with the A-type personality. So sometimes what my thought was that maybe she means like we've got two A's working together here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know
I
what
don't know either.
I'd be interested to find out what the situation is. Like, are you having a hard time working with a coworker that's type A personality? Are you trying to get, because I'm assuming that it's not I want to redo my kitchen and my designer is a type A personality, because you're probably a designer. So I'd like to find out more about it to really approach that.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I'm not sure. She hasn't responded. So, and Renee said, she says she thinks it's the designer that has the A type. Yes. And I was thinking that the client and the designer have the A type. That might be difficult.
Most likely. Yeah, but hopefully the designer is aware of the fact that they are a type A personality and they can uh, let go of some of it to work with other people. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But anyway, everyone is thanking you for this presentation. And I just want
Thank
to
you.
also thank you, Dwayne. It's been great.
Good.
Renee says us A types have to listen more, talk less. There you go.
Absolutely. Big time.
And
Listen
again,
constantly.
yeah. And again, I want to thank Heddick for their generous sponsorship, and to all of you in the audience that joined us today. And once again, to you, Dwayne, for a great, once again, a lovely fireside chat without the fire. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome.